Hello. Hi. Welcome to Denver Startup Week Day 2 afternoon slump. But this talk is going to get you up and excited for DEI. So I want to introduce to you an incredible human, somebody that is really doing the work in the DEI space and that flew here from Atlanta just to talk to you all here. So I'm gonna need the energy high. I know y'all just ate. It's probably nap time, but we're gonna have to hype it up here. So I wanna introduce to you Jorge Hernandez. He's the founding partner and the CMO at Majority, which is a 2022 Newcomer and Breakout Agency of the Year and number 4 on Fast Company's most innovative advertising agencies. That's huge. Woo. You can clap still now. Okay. An integrated marketing veteran with over 20 years of experience, also 10 years here in Denver, he's delivered award-winning work across the beverage, automotive, sports, CPG, and retail categories. Please give a warm welcome to Jorge Hernandez.
Thank you. Thank you. We got the mic on? Not that I need it, but all right, cool. Thanks for that intro. I got to meet Olivia a couple of weeks ago at a couple months ago now at Colorado Ad Day, and it was great. She told me if I could come back, and I was like, absolutely. So the presentation is looking back to see a better future for DE&I. I might be the first person you've ever heard talking about looking back in time to see how to better move forward from a DE&I perspective, but it'll make sense in about 35 minutes, okay? So before we begin, caveat, for internal use only, please do not tell on me because there's all sorts of shit in here that I don't have the rights to. But I do believe if the owners were to see it within the context of my presentation, they'd be happy their snippet of content was used to help shape this narrative. Hopefully, if not, I'm sorry. So Olivia already said it, I'm from Majority. I'm a founding partner and CMO. We opened up in March 2021. It's been an incredible ride. She shared some of the accolades from last year. This year, we've continued with tremendous flattery, tremendous humility. This year we won the agency standout for Ad Age 2023, and we also won Small Agency of the Year. The biggest headline there is how Majority uses diversity as a competitive advantage, and it's gonna be the key of what we're talking about today. You're not gonna hear me talk a lot about corporate social responsibility. You're not gonna hear me talk a lot about like philanthropic efforts, because that's not the point of this presentation. The point of this presentation is how entrepreneurs are going to leverage diversity to have a better competitive advantage in the future. And you guys have the advantage of being able to do it from the start versus having to shift something that's already been in place for a long time, which is awesome. And our model and our premise was really basic. How does the creative product change when the talent model flips the minority into the majority from 25% to 75%? For those who don't know, our industry really struggles when it comes to diversity. It's a difficult industry to get into. It's an industry that's full of nepotism and heritage and lineage, and because of that, it makes it really difficult. A lot of folks don't even know that it's a career. You know, you have to explain to your parents for 20 years what it is that you do. They don't get it. And the industry is hoping to get to 25%, which is an abysmal number when you think about it. So we're like, well, let's flip it. What does that look like? And that's what we did. And we launched in March 2021, so right away people were like, oh, yeah, sure. It was because of this, and BLM, and all of that. And it was like, well, while I'm not glad this happened, but I'm glad that this brought great attention to like the social consciousness, and it's awesome, but that's not why we did it. We did it because we wanted to disrupt the model and bring a better product to the market. The fact that this happened during that time, I don't want to say it's a coincidence, but it's not the reason we did it. So as we think about business and we take a step back, how do you make meaningful change in business, right? And they all kind of start the same. They all start with a conversation, or scribbles on a napkin, or a coaster, you know, or a scrap of paper. That's how we did it, right? That's how most of us have done it. Or maybe notes, or with ChatGPT. There's all sorts of modern shit now that you guys can do. That's cool. We've been having a ton of conversations when it comes to diversity and DE&I, and they're all valid, but are we having the best conversation? we have a lot of conversations with regards to, like, is it the right thing to do? Is it the fair thing to do? And again, it's all valid, but is it the best conversation? So let's take a step back and start from the very, very beginning, which is, what is DE&I? It's diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. The funny thing is, the further the words go, the less you need the beginning. Because if you belong, then you're included and you're being treated fairly, and it's a but anyway, that's a digression. My point is, it's an acronym, it's a corporate social responsibility effort, but what else is it? It's something that's coming to be because there's enough cultural and societal pressures and enough of a paradigm shift where you have to pay attention to it. So it's like, all right, I mean, we've been around for a while. What else has happened in the past that has caused this kind of a seismic change? So I went back in time and I was like, all right. First one I could come up with, specialization. So back in the day, way, way back in the day, you know, everybody lived off the land. You know, everybody had their 40 acres, whatever you want to call it. Not everybody, but again, that's another conversation. You lived off the land, you farmed, you harvested, you had kids in order for them to work on the land. If something broke, you fixed it. So you were kind of good at a lot of things, maybe great at one or two things, but probably good at a couple things, and then not good at all. So it's like, yep, I don't know how to raise chickens, so this family does not have any eggs. We just, no eggs. But then we all started to move together in townships, and all of a sudden it was like, well, wait a minute. You're really good at being a blacksmith, and you're really good at, like, you know, dairy and milk, and you have cows, and you're a sheep herder, and you're great with horses, and you're a carpenter. So all of them started to specialize, and together it lifted it up, right? And it went from being these very rural areas to being townships, and then cities, and then obviously where we are today. That's how it all started. We moved to the assembly line a couple of centuries. 1908, Henry Ford, GM is my client. Got to give this man props. You know, came up with a whole different way of working. Systematized the way of putting things together in order to create more efficient pieces, automobiles in this case, and then also be able to create them in mass quantity. Completely changed everything. All of a sudden, something that was 20 miles away was only 2 hours away, versus we have to leave yesterday in order to get there by Monday. Okay, next one, labor unions. So we have the Industrial Revolution. Corporations are flying sky high. Workers are getting minimized. They're getting squeezed. And one worker isn't doing anything, right? But then they all got together and said, you know what? If we put all our voices together, we can make an impact. We can force these corporations to give us more of what we need in order for it to be equitable. Ironically, today we got the UAW, the writers, and the Screen Actors Guild all on strike. And this changed everything as well. It created the middle class. We talk about the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and how much capitalism during that time and how much that created a lot of the progress that we have, for the most part, experienced today. And then the last one, which is the most recent, is the gig economy. Technology, lack of pensions and lack of incentive to stay in the same company for 20 plus years. They all went away. It's like, well, shit, I want a different work-life balance. I want to work from home. I want to work for different clients. Gig economy completely changed that. Back in the day, companies were like, no, you work full-time, you come here 5 days a week, you'll do the thing that we tell you to do. All of a sudden, talent shifts, and it's like, no, you can work on whatever you want, you can work on competitive products, you can work from home. And what changed that was society, cultural, and in this case, technological shifts, right? Okay. What are all those things? Historical, sure. Movements, yeah. They're innovations. Now, when we use the word innovation, we think of technology. You know, technological innovation, that's the big thing now. But the truth is, innovation, if you look at the dictionary, it's a new method, idea, or product. Product's third. These were new methods and new ideas. Now, this is a tried and true thing. Presenters do, screen grab, Google. It's so 2008. So I asked ChatGPT. I mean, you know, got to stay on top of the things here. Is the assembly line an innovation? Yep. The assembly line is considered a significant innovation in manufacturing processes. It revolutionized the way products are made by introducing a system where each worker is responsible for a specific task and a product moves along a conveyor belt undergoing sequential operations. Cool. What about the gig economy? Is the gig economy an innovation? Yep. The gig economy can be considered an innovation in the way work is organized and accessed. It refers to a labor market characterized by short-term or freelance positions where individuals work on a project basis or provide services on a temporary basis. Cool. So for the sake of this conversation, let's call them innovations. And then let's think about DE&I as an innovation, or potentially an innovation. All right? Now, the beauty about innovations is that they come to be when culture, society, technology, workforce demands them. This is where we are today when it comes to DE&I. 40% of BIPOC will make over 50% of the US population. Today in America, whites under the age of 18 are already in the minority, and within Gen Z, 1 in 6 identify as LGBTQ+. And the one that's not there is, since 2000, more than 1 out of every 2 kids born since then are multicultural. Now, multicultural in a new sense, meaning their parents come from 2 different cultures: German, Iranian, Dominican, Peruvian, African American, Caucasian, the most kind of, that's the one, right? That's the one that's been happening for a long time. That's what multicultural means. And in the future, that's what it's going to mean. Me calling myself multicultural makes no sense. Both my parents are Dominican. Why am I multicultural? Somebody whose both parents are black, why are they multicultural? Both parents are from the same culture. That term is not going to make sense to this new generation. Now, if you're asking, well, it will, because, it'll continue in the legacies. I'm going to get to something later where I'm going to challenge that thought. All right? So, if we look at it through the lens of innovation, the good thing is that there's all sorts of books and business classes and master's programs that talk about innovations, and they break it up in a bunch of different ways. But for the most part, there's 4 of them. There's incremental, disruptive, architectural, and radical. And as you can imagine, it's the closest one there on the XY axis. Incremental is the easiest one, and it's the quickest one, right? And that's the definition of it. This is the most common form of innovation involving gradual but continuous improvements to an existing business. And that's what we've done. By the way, I just want to be fair. Shalia Minatola, wonderful woman. I just have her here as an example. So nothing, no shade at all to Shalia. But this is what happened when the industry woke, so to speak, right? Jobs and diversity exploded. Heads of DE&I, chief diversity, equity, inclusion officers, like they all exploded. We all saw it. Everybody was hiring them. It was the hottest thing. Now, this is where we are now. 3 years after DE&I was jolted into action, how much progress has the world really made? Why Dentsu Creative DE&I lead says focusing solely on numbers won't solve advertising's diversity problem, and then Korn Ferry, along with a lot of other companies and research companies and data companies, have come out with studies that show that it's not working, or it's not having the impact that it should. I saw this article in the Harvard Business Review, and frankly, I actually felt that this was very close to kind of the reality of what it means when you do the incremental thing and you make it a department. Many DE&I initiatives are founded on the flawed assumption that disadvantaged groups are helpless without assistance from those in power, and benevolent marginalization occurs when a dominant group paternalistically controls a weaker one while portraying their actions as supportive. There's so much that's been happening that is very much for PR. We got this, we got that, check out our numbers. It's funny, when we started the company, we were like, wow, there's going to be so many people that are going to want to work with us. And what we realized was, Atlanta's a very strong African-American community, as you probably know. And a lot of those folks got jobs from really big companies and got paid really, really well, like really, really well, because it helped their numbers. Of course, 12, 18 months later, they were calling and saying, getting paid really well, nobody's listening, nobody's felt like, can I come work for you guys? You know what I mean? And there's a little bit of a microcosm of what I just shared. It's the second part of this definition, which I left out. Disruptions in the marketplace might render your improvements useless if your core product does not also respond to changing markets. Going back to the data, we're kind of past the incremental innovation stage. Like, we're past it from a, like, how much is DE&I impacting culture? A lot. Think of movies. Think of theater. Think of music. Think of fashion. Think of technology. Like, there's so much being driven by DE&I, or the folks that fall under DE&I. So in a lot of ways, this was well-intentioned, but it was late to market. Just a couple of examples. These are recent ones. The rise and fall of Chief Diversity Officer. This is from July 21st, 2023. The rise and fall of the Chief Diversity Officer lasted less than like a presidential, like Biden has been in office longer than this actually kind of came and went. And then in this one kind of freaks me out a little bit. In 2021, 73 of agency leaders were white. In 2022, it was 90. Now, just to be fair, Great Recession, the Great Resignation, you know, folks shifting jobs, shifting careers, reevaluating what's important, all these things obviously impact that. But that's a pretty significant impact, right? I love showing this slide because, frankly, everybody's a little bit, I don't want to say exhausted, but it's like exasperated with like, what do I do? Like, how do I want to do something. I feel like this isn't working. What do I do? So this is the part of, this is like the lowest part of the presentation. I'm going to lift all you guys back up now, okay? So stay tuned. It's like, wow, this is a DE&I presentation. The iPhone's up there. Why? Well, this is when we're going to look back a little bit. Most of you, I'm going to assume, unless there's a Doogie Howser in here, can remember when the first iPhone was launched, yeah? Like enough. I mean, maybe you were 4, like hopefully, I don't think anybody here was 4. But you remember it, and you remember how much it changed everything. It's one of those moments you can't look back. It's kind of like the assembly line. Oh, Model Ts, we can afford them in mass quantity. Everything changed after that. Specialization, everything changed after that. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of an analog here. We're going to have a little bit of fun comparing two things that never get compared, right? So what's DE&I? It's this one word, or this one acronym. But it actually encompasses all of this. Hispanic, women, Black, Asian American, Pacific Islander, LGBTQ+, and disabled. All of these fall under the DE&I group. Mobile, it connects people. You can buy. It's a tremendous commerce platform, right? You can plan things. You can research. You've got advertising coming through it. And it drives more content. You deliver more content than anything else, right? It has fundamentally changed the way that we live. And in a lot of ways, so has DE&I. Think of the music. Just think of the Grammys. This year's Grammys opened up with a guy who only spoke and sung in Spanish. Beyonce broke the record for the most amount of Grammys, and then there was this 10-minute segment about hip-hop. One of many in the last 8 months. 20 years ago, that would have been like the multicultural Grammys. Now it's just the fucking Grammys. Or the Grammys, if we keep it PG. 70% of the US population falls into the DE&I group. It's actually like 73. And obviously it's growing just based on numbers. 86% of the US population uses a smartphone. What do they not have in common? Corporate into everything, treat it as its own department. Now, mobile marketing used to be its own department. We all remember that? Let's go back to it. Started as departments. Hey, we should hire this mobile thing. There's something to it. People are texting, sending messages like pictures. I don't know. You can buy shit now. Amazon's like a thing. We should have somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about. Okay, cool. And there were specializations. You'd hire somebody who was into mobile marketing, and all they knew was mobile, and you'd be like, so do you know what, like, have you ever used Excel? No idea what you're talking about. Talk to me about I was going to say Lotus. That's going way back. But I won't do that. Became cultural forces. Anybody here not have their phone on them right now? I don't, and the only reason is because I'm presenting, but I know exactly where it is. By the way, going back to the terminology thing, my son is 16 years old. He's 15, he's going to be 16. I asked my son what a phone does. He'll say 87 things before he says, oh, you can talk on them too. What was the definition of a phone? To talk. What's the definition of a phone today? To do everything you can to avoid talking. Remember that as far as the multicultural, because that terminology doesn't make sense to these new kids. It doesn't. And then when you talk about these conflicts, hey, my dad is black and German, or you know, and then it's multicultural parents. Like, the conflict of like the separate, it's just not going to exist anymore. This is okay. That's a good thing. Can't win without them. Can't win without them. Is there anybody here who is starting a business as an entrepreneur to not win? Is your goal to lose? Or to tie? Or to just survive? Tread water? No? You guys want to win? I'm assuming. All right, cool. Then we are aligned. Everybody remember the mobile marketing department? We all had one. Do you have one now? Anybody here have one now? No? Good. You shouldn't. And the good thing is, as startups, you also shouldn't have a DE&I department. And you guys are in a position where you're starting from scratch or relative scratch or whatever. So, we know incremental, like we go back to the iPhone. The iPhone caused crazy amounts of disruption of innovation. Mobile marketing departments went away. All of a sudden, I had to figure out how to hire people who knew mobile and teach them the business side of things or the marketing side of things or the whatever, or vice versa. I had to hire people that were really savvy business people, but I had to teach them mobile. And it was hard. It was hard. And you felt like I'm old enough to remember like when the digital thing started to happen, where everybody started having broadband. And I was on the younger side then, so I was like the guy who knew what he was doing. But I remember all these VP and SVP of XYZ, super smart people. But they would, I don't know how to do, and they would get so frustrated. And, the IT person or the trainer would be like, it's all good. We're going to figure it out. We're not doing enough of it's all good, we're going to figure it out. We're doing too much of like, we should have this already figured out. Shit takes time. So give yourselves the gift of like, knowing that you're not going to figure it out right away. It's okay. Disruptive innovation is what we're going to talk about now. That's what this requires. Just like all the other examples I provided. It's the introduction of new technologies or methodologies to your business's existing market that create a new value network. Classic, right? Everybody knows these, the case studies are there, all that fun stuff. Entrepreneurs fuel disruption, and a lot of times it's because the whole reason you exist is, I've been doing this for a long time, I see shit missing, I got the courage now to go attack that, and I'm gonna fill that gap. Entrepreneur, success. Venture capitalist comes along, throws a check on the table, says, write what you want on it. Congratulations. But you know what? That's an excuse for those that are corporations now. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. Chipotle. Chipotle was the place that you walked in and got to see your ingredients. You walked down there and saw this, just like, oh, this is super fresh. And then COVID happened. And then mobile marketing and COVID and mobile commerce all exploded. And it was like, no, I want my food there and I want to order it mobile. Shit. We're all about the experience of people walking in. But now people want to call. I got to set up a whole other kitchen in the back now. Because I got to service the people who walk in and the people in the back. By the way, I already have real estate. It's not like I could just decide to buy an extra 1,000 square feet. No, I got to figure out how to do it within my existing real estate. I got to train people. I got to get new POS systems. And for those who don't remember, when we were in the middle of COVID and Chipotle started to do this, it was clunky. Who would go there and be like, it's ready in 15 minutes, and there would be like a gaggle of people all waiting for their same burrito. But 2 years later, it's gotten pretty seamless. They don't mess up the order as much. It's amazing. And now they're opening up 100 stores that have drive-thrus, but they're mobile drive-thru pickups. You don't order through them, you just pick up. So now they're even innovating on top of that. Who else has that, by the way? Nah, man, they're coming up with that on their own. That's awesome. Walmart. Walmart was all about get me in the store because I'm going to sell you more. I don't know if that's what they said. I just made that up, but it sounds like something they would say. Then they realized Amazon was eating their lunch. It's like, shit. Walmart Plus. It's a whole different system. It's a whole different reality, a whole different strategy. I don't want people in the store. I want to give people the opportunity to buy everything they want and not ever come into the store. Now, for those who have worked with Walmart before, one of the benefits of this, Walmart has 14% of the population they just discard. I refuse to shop at Walmart no matter what. I open up this, guess what? I refuse to go into Walmart, but I'll take advantage of the everyday low prices. They're pulling new clientele that they didn't have before. And then Apple's like, you know. We forget, we think that they're a challenger brand. There's nothing challenger about Apple anymore, but they still kind of do this thing. It's amazing, it's impressive. So we didn't have an original model, majority. So obviously that helps. You know, Dentsu and WPP and IPG and all the global, like they got thousands of people and tons of dollars in existing infrastructure. It's tough, it's hard. Now, neither do you. So what I'm kind of challenging you guys a little bit on is like, the people in this room have no excuse to figure out how to do this from scratch. So I'm holding all of you accountable. And I'm going to remember every single one of you. Not really. But if we link up together, I'd be happy to stay connected with every single one of you. Because frankly, these are the type of people, these are the businesses, these are the entrepreneurs, these are the go-getters, these are the pioneers that are going to shift this. Can't have one of these without leaving you with like some sort of 5 steps, or 4 things to listen to, 5 things to watch out for, 3 things to consider. I'm going to try to make them as fun as possible. I keep looking at my watch just because I want to make sure there's some time for Q&A, so it's not because I want to leave. Awesome. Step 1, when it makes sense, look for athletes versus pros. What the fuck does that mean? It means look for talent and not for somebody who already knows what they're doing in your space. This is a difficult thing to do. Because what do we want to do? We want to hire people, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later. We want to hire people to make our lives easier. Well, you're not making my life easier if I'm hiring somebody who doesn't know the game we play. Okay? But, and by the way, I'm a huge soccer fan, so this is no shade, and the team has gotten way better, and we have much better athletes. But we all know the joke, right? Imagine if Allen Iverson and Mookie Betts and Mike Trout and Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes played soccer. How much better would we be? Significant. Now, the reason we've gotten so much better is because a lot of the people that we now have playing actually saw soccer as their primary sport, as their primary passion. But back in the day, it was like, you're a little too small to play football. You're not tall enough to play basketball. You can't hit a ball to save your life. Soccer is the sport for you, you know? And sometimes you also play with other kids that you know. He plays soccer, they play. I'm going to pick him, I'm going to pick them. Versus, I got 3 months. I'm going to Daniel LaRusso. I'm going to train you for 3 months, and you're going to beat Cobra Kai. Hopefully everybody knows what the hell that I'm talking about there. So that, like, think about who can I pull in that you can tell has something. They might not know my business, but damn it, I know that if I pull them in, they're going to be something. And think about it as disruption. Like when it's incremental innovation, it's like, I don't have to do that. But like when the iPhone came around, it's like, well, shit, I got to figure this out. Dude, you're unbelievable with the coding, and you understand it left and right. Do you have good communication skills? Verbal and written? No? No, you don't like to talk to anybody, do you? Okay. What about any sort of business acumen? No, you went to okay, you learned how to program by yourself. Got it. Okay. Do you work well with others? No, I like to work on my own shit. Okay. Well, we're going to train that because what you bring to the table, we need. We made hard choices because we had to. With DE&I, we have to now. It's not incremental. It's not a nice to have. Next. If you're looking for something special, don't buy off the rack. And what I mean by that is, we all know that there's discrepancies in resumes, in backgrounds. You know, my son, I'm a first generation. I had no idea how to get into this industry. I got into it by luck, and it was after trying to get jobs for a couple years. My son seems to like this industry. My son is going to have every door opened for him. I'm going to tell him exactly what to say on the resume. I'm going to tell him exactly what to do with the extra. I'm so able to like hack this kid into like a job. But that's because but most people don't know that. So if you're shopping where everybody else does, first of all, if you're doing that, then the candidates who do fit this model, guess what? Somebody's probably overpaying them to go there. Just face it. So you gotta go searching. You gotta go digging. What are you looking for? What kind of clubs make sense for that? What kind of environments are those kind of folks in? I need to get into that. Number 3, think growth curve first, and I mean the whole curve. And this is going back to number 1. It's an extension on that because it's important. Everybody's seen this, right? Everybody knows this curve. Or if you don't, you guys are entrepreneurs, you want to know this curve. Linear versus exponential. Linear is what publicly traded companies want to do because stockholders want to know that my money is safe, that it's going to grow at a very consistent level. Exponential are what we do. Startups, entrepreneurs who know that I got a vision and I have an opportunity to 3x, 4x where I am now. The most important part of this curve is that. See how in the beginning it's a dip? Everybody who started a gig here, you probably had to sacrifice what you were getting paid, all the snacks and the beverages being included, maybe a service expense account. You had to sacrifice all that shit, right? A nice office, now you're working out of your basement, or a WeWorks or some sort of combination of that. You have to give up shit. In order to hire people that don't have the same background and can bring diverse experiences, chances are you're going to have to go, you're going to have to dip. People are going to come in, they don't know what they're doing. You're going to have to learn how to communicate with them. You're going to have to find, this is hard. However, that's the reward. But this happens first, there's no denying it. And guess what? This part sucks. My first AE, finally, it's like, we can get an AE. We have like more than 2 jobs. But I didn't have like a big budget. And I'm in Atlanta, so I knew this woman who, like somebody I worked with swear by. And we have it like 75%. So you also have to hiring like that is tough. Because you might know somebody, I could plug that person in right away, but it's not kind of serving the bigger purpose that you've outlined for your company, right? Because I've been in this industry for a long time, and this industry struggles with diversity, so of course, I haven't worked with a lot of diverse people. When I worked at Denver, I probably supervised anywhere between 45, 50 people. I could probably count on one hand how many of those were not, just, Anglo-Caucasian, which we're in Denver, it's all good. I had no problems with that. I'm just saying, when you're trying to then build something where the majority is the minority, it's just hard. You don't have a lot to pick from. So I hired somebody with 0 experience. She didn't know what scope of work was. She didn't know what out of home was. She didn't know what a comp was. She didn't know what, a banner, none of that. The amount of time I had to spend training her in the first 6 months was significant. Now, you're like, Jorge, why'd you bring her in? Because she knew a lot. She had a great business acumen. She came highly recommended from people I knew. And she knew basketball really well, and that was the client. So at least she knew the client business. So something. I found some sort of connectivity, right? Right now, she's the best we got. She is so good. I mean, this curve actually does not do justice how much higher she is than the linear progression. She is so good. But in the beginning, it was hard. And all I wanted was some damn help, man. I was building comps and scope of works. I was like, but that's what it takes. Number 4, If you have to work for it, chances are you will cherish it, right? We all know that, right? For anybody who has kids or whatever, like, make them work for it. They'll value it more. Well, that actually applies here, too. Like, if you pull people that have had, I don't like using the word privilege, but like, that have kind of had it all kind of easy for themselves, like, it's just natural. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not some special human. Like, I had a lot of opportunities, and I squandered a shit ton of them. Or I didn't take advantage of them, or I didn't appreciate them, because that's what humans do. It's humans. But the reason I put this up there is because a lot of folks that never had it come to them easy, and because of that, their position, has everybody here seen those videos where it's like, it's a bunch of different people, and it's like, if you had this, take one step forward. You've all seen that, right? And then it ends up in like, you know, a bunch of folks that came from a good background and this and that, all the way up. You see, like, we've all seen that, right? All right, so this is Paula Bedmudez, Con Coordinator Majority. You know, I'm not saying that you hire like, hey, you're from the street, you have no, you know, education, like, hey, great. Like, that's not, you know, that's, please don't take that as the, you know. We finished a shoot and we went to a restaurant to celebrate Kids Foot Locker. And she comes up, you know, can I take your order, this and that, you know, blah, blah, blah. She's doing great. We come in late. She's like, no, I'll stay, like, doing phenomenal kind of customer service. And then she's like, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you guys do, you know? It's like, well, we're just, you know, starting a marketing agency. You know, we just did a shoot, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, cool. That's amazing. That's what I'm trying to get into. My antennas immediately go up. I'm like, oh, great. What's the deal? And she's like, well, you know, I'm still in school. I graduated in December. This was 2021 for 2022. I'm sorry, 2022 for 2023. I'm like, all right. Get her information. Time passes. Reach out to her. I'm like, hey, you remember this? She's like, oh, yeah, you know. Talk to her. Interview her. Terrible interview. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's never been coached. Doesn't have any internships. She's done like resident assistants, but like not internships like, hey, I did this for 3 months, or I joined the MAPE group, or I'm on Creative Ladder. All the things that I would tell my son. She doesn't know. You know why? Because she's driving herself to school 3 days a week from 2 hours away, and she's working to pay for that because her dad is an immigrant from Colombia, and her mom is also an immigrant from Colombia. One is a nanny, the other one's a carpenter. Basically, you know when you hire somebody to fix your house, the people that they hire, those are her parents. So of course she doesn't know any of this. So I'm like, okay. Part of what I want to do is give people opportunities, so at least I'm like, you know what? And I'm like, wow, this is, like if I was gonna, like if this was like a normal interview, like, no. You're just not doing, you don't show, like, she was very shy. She was super intimidated. She's like, this guy is like, you know. We forget, like we think we're not intimidating, then other people are like, oh my God, this, you know. I'm just like, I'm just trying to talk to you. So I'm like, you know what, let's do a 3-month internship contract thing. You know, if it doesn't work out, it's just 3 months, you know. 6 weeks later, we ripped that up. She's fucking fantastic. She'll get promoted in 3 months. She's been amazing. She's been at a bunch of shoots. And her appreciation is so big. We have changed her life. But she put tremendous energy and effort into it. Now, would it have been easier for us? Hey, we're majority. We're winning all these different things. Like this, we don't have any shortage of people who would love to work with you. But there's a hunger there. Hunger, desire, resolve, commitment, conviction. How many people you know have the right credentials but would have never gone through the whole, I'm driving myself to school 3 days a week. And I have to give up things like sororities and this and that because I can't afford those. I can't waste that time doing that. Find these folks. They're all over the place. And last, assume you have little in common. Assume it. Because guess what? If you have a lot in common, then chances are it's not a diverse lived experience, man. And I don't mean like from an ethnic and like race and like, hey, man, this isn't, you know, this isn't like the 40s anymore either. Like you could be in a fraternity and have, you know, black fraternity brothers and Hispanic fraternity and Asian and, you know, or you're in a, you know, men and women or however you want to, you know, identify yourself. And there's great diversity there, but not necessarily from a lived experience perspective. You know what I mean? I'll say this kind of cautiously. But it's interesting, you know, like when you reach a certain level, like the truth is that's the level you know and that's the level you want to stay at. We all know the affirmative action thing that happened and like some of the stuff with Harvard and stuff like that. Well, you know, some of the folks that want to make sure that some of those benefits that Harvard provided as far as like legacy stuff were people of color that were like, fuck that, man. I made it to Harvard. I want all the benefits now. You know what I mean? And that's okay. Again, that's human. The second we start to like forget that these are all human nature, you want better for you and your family. Come on. Of course. I would. I worked my ass off to get there, and I'm going to give the kid an opportunity? What am I going to say? Hey, son, I got all these things I could teach you to give you a leg up, but I'm not. Figure it out, dude. No, I'm not going to do that. So you want little in common. You kind of want this. You know, just a bunch of people that if you ask them all questions about what they did over the weekend, they give you a bunch of different answers. If they all say, I was in the club, and then I went to dinner here, and then I watched the Broncos on Sunday, and then I had tickets for the Nuggets, and 5 out of the 6 people say that same thing, guess what? Great that you have so many people with you know, things that you have in common, but you're not bringing a lot of diversity to the table. You're not bringing different lived experiences. You're not bringing different perspectives. You're just not. And that's not going to give you the competitive advantage, going back to that. Going back to the comparisons of the iPhone and stuff like that, think about what happened when all of a sudden these companies that kind of everybody looked the same, all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to figure out mobile and commerce and all these things, social. All of a sudden people are walking around, it's like, that one looks like my kid. That one dresses like a bum. I don't know what the hell that is. That's what it was. All of a sudden, a very monolithic kind of view of what everybody in the workplace looked like changed. Because you had to. Same thing. This is our picture. You know, it's like, yeah. But this all looks like, wow, you could just tell they all got along. Bullshit. Different socioeconomic realities. Man, we have some folks that have some pretty fucked up backgrounds. And I don't have that fucked up background. You know, my parents kicked ass when they came here, and I had a much better opportunity than a lot of my cousins and, you know, family members or like, you know, I'll call it circles. Communication styles, like again, man, talk differently, use different language, different jargon, different ways to type, different ways to like, you know, passive-aggressive, overly aggressive, passionate, reserved, all those kind of things. Striking the balance. This is a big one. This, to me, is one of the biggest ones because everything is about, like, systems. Like, the systems were messed up. Systemic this and systemic that. And then everything gets thrown away. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Just because XYZ has been part of a systemic issue and they grew up, you know, very much in a monolithic reality, doesn't mean that their 20 years of experience or how to tactfully negotiate or how to build relationships, doesn't mean that gets thrown out. And that's a little bit of sometimes what happens. It's like all of a sudden all that experience doesn't matter. And it's like, no. That's bullshit. It's not like all of a sudden, again, using the example, hey, I know everything about the iPhone. And it's like, great. But when I have you present, can't have you present this way. Can't have you talking a bunch of language people don't understand. Otherwise, all those other folks are not going to know what the hell you're talking about. So I do need you to learn some of those things. So striking that balance. What stays and what goes with regards to what worked in the organizations we worked at and then what is different. Processes. We all hate them. We need them. Talent reviews. Don't want them. Eventually you get big enough, you kind of need them. So, you know, not everything gets thrown away. This is definitely harder, and it's definitely better. The things that I have learned by being surrounded by people that come from all these different backgrounds in the last 2 years dwarfs what I learned in the previous 10. It's not even close. And then eventually we all start to figure it out, and we gel. And it becomes fucking like music. It is awesome, but it's hard to get there. but you're definitely better because of it. What do they say? Things worth doing. Things worth going after, right? It's a cliche, right? They're hard. Things that come easy usually aren't, but they're usually not effective either. Second part to this. This innovation strategy can spark huge success, but sometimes requires several attempts to surpass the original model. In other words, you're gonna fuck it up. Probably once, twice, 3 times. It's okay. Like, these things are hard. This is hard. We're trying to change systems and processes and ways that we communicate that has been going on for centuries. I know we've become this instant gratification society. Newsflash. These type of changes are hard. You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday about Dion. And, of course, I was going to get up here and not be able to talk about Dion, right? The guy's, like, out of control right now. But the conversation was about, like, how much is that going to change the school? Like, when he goes, will it change anything? And I was like, let me ask you this question. 20 years ago, would he have gotten hired? I think the answer is no. I think we all know that. Will it change the institutions of the people that are running the institution at this time? Maybe not. Will it evolve and enlighten a bunch of people that are currently students that 20 years from now will be captains of industry? Fuck yeah. That's 20 years. And then 20 years after that, and then 20 years after that, and then 20 years after that. How far have we gotten? How many branches have branched out? How many dozens? It becomes thousands, it becomes millions. I heard a stat the other day, and then I'm almost done. The Dutch, I believe it was, paid $24 for the island of Manhattan. It's like, fuck, what a steal, right? I was like, well, hold on. If I invested $24 in 1626 at 4% interest, it'd be $70 million today. Ooh. If I invested it at 8% interest, it'd be $100 trillion. So these little things, the difference between 4 and 8% in 1 year, not a big deal. 5 years, not a big deal. 10, 20, I wish I could see more, but you know. But what we're trying to do is change things that have been, again, 1626. Island of Manhattan was purchased. Manhattan is the epicenter of like industrial and like, so if we want to say 1926 or 1626 to 2026, 400 years. Unfortunately, something else has been 400 years as well. Fuck. But anyway, if we start to do things now, how different will it be? And I don't even mean 400 years, but how different will it be? Because it didn't take 400 years for Manhattan to become Manhattan. Incremental. Disruptive, but the changes will be incremental. Going to leave you with this quote. So this gentleman is somebody by the name of Marcus Collins. He's the chief strategy officer at White & Kennedy, New York, which is a fabulous agency. Diversity isn't merely a social good, it is a business advantage. Diversity leads to greater perspective, which drives better ideas and solutions. We see it in culture, we see it in music, we see it in movies, we see it in writing, we see it in acting, we see it in fashion, we see it in everything. Because it's 73% of us. So of course. If anybody wants to connect, if anybody wants to talk more, if anybody wants to tell me to shut the fuck up, I will listen to all of those things. I probably won't do the third, but I'll listen. And I want to say thank you very much. Hopefully you found this enlightening. Hopefully this woke you up versus made you more sleepy. And Olivia, thank you so much for inviting me to come and be a part of this.
Thanks so much, Jorge. Really, really well done. When did you leave Denver for Atlanta?
2013.
Aw, how sad.
Okay.
So I wanted to pick up on your beneficial marginalization. And what I'm afraid of, as a person who's been through a few of these as an older guy, is this whole idea, we were talking with a very smart guy about serving the disabled community with a lot more mobile and different approaches last night. But how do we get past the marginalization that says, oh, we've done enough? In other words, bringing back that quota mentality, that once our corporation is 68% X, then the rest of it can go on without change.
I mean, I think the answer is to continue to, like, again, like when I think of the word quota, I think of like, what's our quota for cause marketing? We're supposed to, based on our, annual report, 2%, right? Okay, we gotta make sure we hit the 2%. What's our quota with regards to diverse hiring practices? Oh, we gotta make sure that we spend at least X amount on that, or we interview, the Rooney rule, where it's, every head coach, you need to, interview at least one, which was a charade, as we all know. What's the quota on the amount of money we have to put towards training? Those are quotas. When you look at it through the lens of this is a business imperative and a competitive advantage, you know what we don't say when it's that? Hey, what's our quota on profit? Are we only supposed to make 4%? So 8%, can we make? No, just 4, bring it back to 4. And I think that's the fundamental thing there, is the second we start to forget that this is about a business and a competitive advantage is when we start to get back into those type of conversations. It starts to feel like, oh, we're doing good. You know what? Do good for your company by doing good in society. Actually, they're not mutually exclusive. So I think it's a great point that you bring up. And I think it's for us to remember. Again, it's the iPhone. Hey, so I'll use an example. When the iPhone came out, you know what nobody called it? A toy. But think about it. When we didn't know exactly what we were doing with it, what was the thing we did? Candy Crush. Sending pictures. Gifts, boomerangs. Like it was like fun toy stuff. But it wasn't a toy. Nobody treated it that way. Even though in the beginning it was kind of used that way. 2-year-old kid, what do? iPhone. I need 30 minutes just to myself. Here, mess with the screen, please. I need time. It's Friday. I'm tired. So that would be my response back is, why are we talking about it through the lens of a quota? Quota's like community service. What's your quota? So that's what I would say in response to that. Yes?
Thank you. This is amazing and
Thank you.
Enlightening. Correct. So when you are looking for the, I forgot what phrase you used, but not buying off the rack, right? And you're
off the rack, yeah.
How do you choose? How did you know that waitress was the one?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. But here's the trick, though. How do you know that the person that gave you that stellar resume and interview just wasn't trained really well at doing it? How often have you hired somebody where it's like, fuck, man, that person interviewed really well, but whoo? How often have you gone after the person with the resume versus how often have we hired from outside instead of promoting? Because this person we know out of the 10 things does 8 really, really well, but doesn't do too well. This other person who I don't know is showing me they can do all 10, but hasn't shown me anything because I've never worked with them. So the answer is I don't know, but the truth is you don't know a lot of things. The thing is we feel secure of like, whoa, it's a paper, it says it right there. And it's like, yeah, there's 8,000 articles that tell me exactly the words to use, the words not to use. I know the buzzwords. I know the words that I have to put in my LinkedIn. I know. The answers to the test are there, which is actually a good analogy. If I gave you a test and you knew the answers, does that tell me anything about how competent you are in that subject? We all know how to interview. We know what to say. We know what to do with the resumes. We know. So what I would do is you dig. Like you got to dig. Like you dig a little bit more. How do you meet people in the social environment? You know what I mean? And again, it's hard. It takes more time. It's so easy. Here's 10 resumes. They've been whittled down to 3. I'm going to set up I'm not saying it's easier. So please, definitely not easier. but more productive, more beneficial, and ultimately going to be better for your business. Does that answer your question? Anyone else? Yes.
So one of the graphs that I immediately thought of that I'm sure all of us have seen too is that early adopter, you know, just the classic bell curve. And then especially when it comes to like your Apple analogy and any kind of technology. And I love that with what you're presenting, that analogy between the two. So what do you think is that tipping point that we need? I feel like we're kind of still in the early adopter phase, and I don't know if you would agree with that, but what do you feel like is going to be that tipping point, or how do we bring more of the critical mass into the fold? And I know, like you said, us as disruptors hopefully are a part of that conversation, but I would love if you have some kind of key indicators or things that you think that would really get people's buy-in to get them a part of the critical mass in the same way that we do with like the iPhone and other technology.
You know, that is an excellent question, and I will start by saying I don't have that answer. Like, I wish I could provide key indicators. I don't know. You know, my good friend Jeff is back there, and I think about he's very much he's a marketer, he's very much in the film industry, and you know, I think about some of the scripts that have become iconic movies, like how much they bounced around and how long they took to actually get like green lit, or they got green lit, then they got paused, then they got optioned, then they got turned around, like, and it's like, wow, that script's been around, it was so obvious. It was the best picture. The script's been around for 20 years. It's like, really? Nobody else decided to do this? And it happens all the time. So I don't know the answer to that. I will say, so you think about Apple, and you think about what they've been able to do, which is pretty meteoric. You know, Apple started in '76, right? So it's almost 50 years. It's like a long time, you know? And that is like the ultimate, like, holy shit, you change things in a way that is unbelievable in 50 years. That's actually meteoric, you know? But I will say this. When value is created, one of the best things that corporate America offers us is that they provide scale. And they copy things that are successful. Because they use data as a way to validate their decisions. So we start the different things. Olipop was one of the ones that I had there. Soda, not healthy. Olipop, I beg to differ. Olipop will sell for $1 billion. To probably Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, Schweppes, or whatever. And when that happens, other companies are going to be like, well, I need my ingredient-enhanced soda. Well, which one's coming up? And then they'll scale. So what'll probably start to happen, Google scaled. Remember when Google started to say, I don't need people that graduated from college. I need people that show me that they can program and stuff like that. And I'll hire a 19-year-old over a 24-year-old with a master's. Well, then guess what happened? All sorts of people started to take that path. So I think from an entrepreneur perspective, we're the ones who can start the fire. The tipping point probably won't happen until the fire is ablaze because of corporations, but we're the ones who are going to get the kindling to get that fire going. And then you can throw big-ass logs on top of it. Make sense? Anyone else? I think I got 90 seconds. All right. Well, thank you very much.